You know, I never really got into anime. In fact, I didn't really like it. And I think it was to do with the over-exaggerated expressions due to the fact that it's limited in certain aspects, such as the ability to be subtle. And so you have to hear every gasp and noise coming from the character to get across what the character is emoting. Huh? What? Okay, calm down. It also has to do with the idea that I find it much easier to immerse myself and feel a connection with something that is live action and not drawn animation, as although we know they are actors and it's not real, they can still sell the idea that it's real more convincingly than an anime, in my opinion. So, if you can't get me immersed by visuals, the storytelling has to be so good that on itself has to grab me. I would treat an anime as similar to a book on how it needs to get my attention. The plot, characters, themes, and whatnot have to sell me into believing this world. And luckily, this is where the anime I'm talking about today excels. That anime being Monster. And I will say, I'm not going to do a great deep dive because Monster is so complex and there's so many elements in the story that are so easy to miss. So I would need to rewatch the whole series a few times, and that in itself is a monster task. I don't know if anyone else felt like this, but when the last episode of Monster finished, the feeling I had was like, not empty, but I don't even know what the word to use. But like I needed to take a trip to the mountains by myself and digest this. It was that type of feeling. And you know what? I love that stuff that makes you feel like that. Stuff that makes you think about morality, ethics, and human nature. And I think, to me, that's what Monster is about. It's about human nature. Each character from Kenzo Tenma, Lunge, Nina Fortner, Grimmer, Eva Hyman, Johan. Each of these characters are almost like an archetype. By that, I mean Dr. Tenma. Sorry, I have to do this. Dr. Tenma. Oh my god. If I offended any Japanese people, I'm so sorry. He is like the pure good character, right? Nothing about him is really offensive to society, really. He is the image of goodness in this story, like a Luke Skywalker type. You have Lunge, who is skeptical to a fault and shows us that obsession can often be blinding and illustrates the power of acknowledging your own faults. You have Franz Bonaparte, who is like the actual true evil, and his monster is Johan Liebert, who is the product of that evil, just like Frankenstein's monster. And I can go on with all the characters, but Monster is a story that is very raw, to put it simply. And as I said, I feel very unqualified to talk about the intricate details of the story. And in fact, there are many videos online where they talk about the stuff in a more comprehensible manner. Because this story does leave a lot to the imagination, and I will come back to that idea later. So, why did Monster succeed in making me like an anime? Well, it's a few things. Of course, the storytelling and intriguing characters I already mentioned, but another thing that got me into it was the seriousness it held. Right from the pilot episode, which hooked me immediately. You can tell that this is a piece of work not to take lightly. So as a result, that made me take it seriously, along with the setting being in real life Europe, and not include many fantasy elements that I see most animes doing, which is completely fine. My favourite stories tend to be like fantastical, but with Monster it was clear cut what the rules of this world are, because well, it's in a real life setting. Sometimes in anime, when you see lasers and powers and whatnot, we can understand what it means through the story telling us, but we don't have them types of fantastical powers in the real world, so there's a limit to what we can understand. With guns and knives, we know what that's like. We don't have to use our brains for that. Now that might be a weird critique for some of you, but to me, it makes sense on how I feel as an individual when I watch a type of media. Another thing that I liked about Monster that I'm not a fan about most other animes is that it's not a shonen. Is that right? I'm not good on this terminology, okay? Treat me like I'm an old man and correct me if I'm wrong. But I've seen clips and such of shonen stuff, and man, it just doesn't seem like it would be for me. I feel like I would have a hard time sitting through something like One Piece, where it has like over 1,000 episodes. It's just, sorry, not for me. I don't mind lighthearted stuff, but my preference is stuff that is going to be thought-provoking. Stuff like Berserk and Monster. I did notice a funny thing happening as I was watching more and more of Monster, and that is that I was starting to appreciate certain aspects that I previously didn't. For example, the animation and designs I found myself admiring. I especially like how when you look at Eva, when she's coming across as nice and happy, she's drawn very soft and, you know, easy on the eyes. But when she goes raging bitch mode, they turn her face into an animalistic looking demon. Like, look at that thing. Another example is Nina Fortuna's expressions when she's having like a breakdown. Yeah, that looks great and frightening. Another thing that I found myself appreciating, and this is gonna sound cringe, but I love the Foley sound effects, like the footsteps and the sound of running and doors opening. I don't know why, it's just something I find, I guess, cute, like a little precious thing about it. And oh my god, I can't forget about the music. Oh, the OST. I actually very much appreciate when films, TVs and games and whatnot repeat the same track countless times throughout the story. It could get overplayed to a certain degree, but I don't think Monster does that. But the reason why I think it's good to play a track countless times than just being a one-off theme is that it can fit many purposes. The audience is more likely to remember the certain tracks. I have a few in my head from the anime right now. Like, I think my favorite track is that really happy sounding one where it plays when there tends to be good vibes, which, you know what? I actually found out it wasn't actually officially released. Why? Why does this happen to me? It's the same with Final Fantasy. All my favorite tracks are on like an unreleased album. I also like the one that plays when something eerie is going on. The one that gives you goosebumps when something frightening has been found out. Of course, the intro and credit music, which it fits amazingly with the vibe of the whole thing. And I actually really like that angelic theme that plays a few times when we see Johan. It sounds like an alternate version of the song that plays in the credits. Can't forget about the one that sounds like, he's coming here. The moment when it builds the strings and then you get this little unnerving staccato pattern. I love that beautiful sounding one that plays in a lot of heartfelt moments. There's so many more I could go over, but I think it would be a bit redundant to do that. Alright, what I want to talk about next is the thing that brings the most intrigue in the show, and that is the character of Johan Liebert. I had seen images of this pretty boy before, and I heard he was the best villain in anime. Well, do I agree with that after watching this? Well, I wouldn't call anyone stupid for saying so, but to me, bitch boy Griffith still takes the cake. However, one thing I think Monster does incredibly well is for almost the entire first half of Monster, we don't really see Johan at all except for the first time when we see him as an adult. Instead, he's treated kind of like Jaws or a character like Lord Voldemort, the mysterious shadow that hangs over everyone and everything. This is extremely well executed in terms of tension and payoff. I love Dr. Tenma and I wanted him to succeed, but just like The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's Joker, anytime Johan was on screen, he stole the show. One thing I see people saying that I kind of disagree with is when people call Johan pure evil. For the first half of Monster, I would probably agree with that. But when things change is when Johan's plans change. And that's after he reads the book that he read when he was a kid, The Nameless Monster, when his plan goes from the last person standing in the world to taking revenge on those who shaped him into the individual he is, and eventually enact the perfect suicide from the hands of Dr. Tenma. And with this, we see more and more backstory, and when Johan gives us more exposition through his dialogue, and we come to eventually learn that Johan is the way he is because of the way people treated him. From a young age, lacking an identity in terms of looks and a name, a deprivation of a basic human characteristic. Along with having a sister, Nina, who at the time was called Anna, who is also an awesome character in the story. She is just as complex as Johan as we see her experience turmoil that is similar to Johan's. Though she manages to rise above it and be a better person, it seems Johan was affected more from their childhood. Him and Nina, or Anna, were basically identical when they were very young, and this idea of them looking exactly the same leads to one of my favourite moments in which the implications are chilling. I will talk about that soon. One of the more intriguing elements of the story to me is the story of the nameless monster that affected Johan greatly as a child. My interpretation of the story is basically about identity. The monster desires a name. He is desperate for an identity. If we don't know who we are, that is frightening. It leads us to believe that we don't exist. When the monster splits in two, that represents Anna and Johan himself. As he often shares his identity with his sister, he thinks his soul is split into two people. He is Anna and Anna is him. The thing is, the nameless monster wants to have a name, but he can't because he's the nameless monster, who is always hungry and consumes everything in its path. So even when he's found a name, no one will be around to know it. Due to the circumstances that happen to Johan, he envisions himself as this monster. He is not like the monster, he is the monster. And so with this nihilistic philosophy he has, we see him enact the story of the nameless monster in real life. And he does a pretty good job at it. As many characters struggle to figure out who Johan really is, he is capable of making himself look like his sister, a bit like a shape-shifting monster. Also, as a side note, the idea of Johan putting makeup on, shaving his legs, putting perfume on and practicing his voice is hilarious to me.
Now open up your eyes, you see the world that is red.
And we know he possesses the ability to persuade and manipulate people into doing what he wants, like mentally ill people such as Roberto. And he can even manage to bring out the darkness in everyone, no matter who you are. Like what he did with Richard Braun, he compels his inner monster to consume him, his alcoholism. However, when Johan rediscovers the same book again when he's at the library, he has a fresh perspective in which he realizes maybe he's not the monster the universe wants him to be, and that he's a human and has free will. And that is when his plan changes in the story. So I've said all that because I want to say that Johan is not a pure evil villain. There's just so much tragedy he's experienced that it's hard not to be sympathetic. To me, he's definitely more of a manipulator or a sympathetic type of villain. Now, there are many great scenes in this anime, from the rooftop scene with Richard and Johan, Long Ear and Roberto's fight, oh my god, so cool, Johan's first appearance as an adult, and the whole library sequence. But my favourite scene by far is one of the last ones, in which Kenzo Tenma is by Johan's hospital bed after saving him once again from a bullet wound to the head, mirroring the first time we see this happen in the first episode. However, what comes next, whether it be real or just some sort of hallucination by Tenma, is the real spine chiller, and that is the revelation that, according to Johan's testimony, his mother was indecisive in what child to give up for experimentation. Which one was the unwanted child? You gotta remember, they looked identical to one another. Did Johan's mother think that she was giving up Anna? Or did she think it was Johan? Which one did she prefer? Which one of us was unwanted?
Well, which is it? Which one of us didn't she need?
And this was good fuel towards Johan's nihilistic outlook on life and human nature. The basic idea that a mother should love you is stripped away from him. And what I love that the writer, oh god, here we go, Naoki Urasawa does,
wow, incredible,
is with Johan, and that's putting him in the realm of this mysticism, making him feel like he's just a ghost sometimes, a figment of people's imagination. And I guess that adds to the idea of him being like the fictional character, the nameless monster. But it got me thinking, and I realized it was very similar to something else. And that is with Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. A man who came from nowhere, an unknown origin, seemingly absent of friends, a mysterious figure. And it's very similar to Monster in this respect. Which reminds me of the scene where the character played by Tommy Lee Jones, who is a cop, is entering a room and they play trickery on us by showing us a shot of Anton hiding. But when the cop opens the door, no one is there. In fact, Anton never gets caught. He wins and he walks away.
You didn't see me. I was already gone.
Very like to Johan almost winning by getting his final wish of the perfect suicide. However, we know Tenma saves his life. Now, I love when storytellers show and don't tell, and this was executed wonderfully with the last shot we see in Monster, and that is the lone hospital bed in which Johan was in, with a breeze coming from the open window. Yet again adding to this idea of, is Johan real? Did he leave? Did he jump out the window? Is he still evil? Did he leave to play as the monster again? Or maybe he just went for a piss. And I was very surprised when I looked up online how people felt about the ending, because a lot of people felt underwhelmed with how it ended. But to me, this was the only way to end this story. It makes the most sense in terms of themes and characters for this to be the last shot. And I love when creators leave things to the viewer's imagination in which good conversations can be had. Christopher Nolan does this a lot. One of my favourites being the end of Inception. Did he really wake up? I'm glad that this is how it ended. After I watched the anime, I did search up how it compared to its manga counterpart, because I am aware of the idea that manga is always the superior choice, and so far with the one manga I've read, that being Berserk, I agreed with this take, and I was expecting Monster to have major stuff left out of the anime. To my surprise, it was extremely faithful to the point where people said the anime is better in some aspects. Man, I wish that could always be the case. Alright folks, hope you liked my unorganized thoughts about the anime. I did enjoy it very much. Good job, you get a smiley face, Monster. Also, thank you for the support on my Berserk video. It exceeded my expectations very much. And yeah, take care people. Oh, by the way, why is Grimmer the best side character ever?